Hola, muy buenas tardes a todos. Mi nombre es Rosy Alejandra Lara y soy coordinadora de Educación y Comunicación en SUMe Sustentabilidad para México. SUMe es una asociación sin fines de lucro y además de ser el Green Building Council de México, es un espacio plural que congrega a todos los sectores de la sociedad interesados y comprometidos con el futuro sustentable de nuestro país, llevando a cabo webinars, cursos, talleres, foros, entre otros eventos y actividades durante todo el año. Bienvenidos a este webinar SUME con el tema From Risks to Opportunity, How to Decarbonize Assets While Adding Value. Del riesgo a la oportunidad, cómo descarbonizar activos mientras generan valor. Sugerimos escribir sus dudas o preguntas en el chat para que sean respondidas al terminar la presentación del día de hoy. A continuación, me gustaría presentar a nuestros invitados. Se trata de Przemyslav Rekshak y Javier Torres de JWA, miembro activo de SUME. Przemyslav o Chemo encabeza el Departamento de Energía y Desempeño de Edificios, liderando un equipo especializado que ofrece servicios como simulaciones de consumo energético, análisis para certificaciones LEED, BREEAM y WELL, y además de mediciones físicas en instalaciones reales. Su labor abarca desde el diseño de edificios nuevos hasta la mejora de los existentes, siempre con un fuerte enfoque en criterios ESG. Cuenta con amplia experiencia en auditorías basadas en estándares ASHRAE y en el desarrollo de gemelos digitales para optimizar el desempeño de instalaciones, reducir emisiones y generar ahorros operativos. Su trabajo integra el cumplimiento normativo y de certificaciones con la definición de soluciones prácticas y rentables, asegurando que los edificios alcancen altos estándares de sostenibilidad y confort. Javier es ingeniero mecánico administrador con 10 años de experiencia en edificación sustentable, eficiencia energética, simulaciones y liderazgo de equipos multidisciplinarios. Dentro de los proyectos que ha participado se encuentran edificios certificados LEED, WELL, Net Zero, Fitwel y Edge. Su trabajo en servicios de simulación energética, commissioning, análisis energéticos, y auditorías energéticas ha impactado más de 60 proyectos nacionales e internacionales en países como España, Reino Unido, Panamá, Portugal, Hungría, China y Brasil, entre otros. Javier habla español, inglés y portugués y actualmente se encuentra estudiando un MBA en la Universidad de La Rioja. Dejo con ustedes a Chemo y Javier. Adelante.
Muchas gracias, Rocío. Hola, ¿qué tal? Buenas tardes a todos. Bueno, primero que nada, gracias a SUME por la organización y por tenernos aquí todos unidos y también gracias a ustedes por unirse. Esperamos que este webinar sea de gran valor para ustedes. Vamos a comenzar con una pequeña introducción en español y luego cambiaremos a inglés, donde mi compañero Shimislav les explicará el resto de los slides en inglés. Entonces, primero que nada, quisiera dar una breve introducción. Como mencionaba Rocío, mi nombre es Javier Torres y trabajo en JWA. Somos una consultora especializada en sostenibilidad, neutralidad climática, eficiencia energética y estrategias ESG para el sector inmobiliario. Como les mencionaba, aquí está mi compañero de Polonia, Przemysław, y también nos acompaña nuestra directora de México, Daniela Castro. Bueno, GWO lleva 3 años en el mercado y hoy somos un equipo de 70 expertos en sostenibilidad con oficinas en Polonia y en México. Trabajamos en el mercado europeo y en Latinoamérica con algunas de las empresas inmobiliarias más importantes y abarcando desde hoteles, desarrollos de uso mixto, instalaciones industriales y oficinas, entre otros. En pocas palabras, nuestro trabajo consiste en ayudar a propietarios y promotores a planificar, implementar y verificar un mejor rendimiento en los edificios para que los proyectos consuman menos energía, tengan menos emisiones de carbono operativo y cumplan con las expectativas de ESG que se están viendo en la actualidad. En nuestra experiencia en Europa, los edificios con cero emisiones ya no son un nicho, sino que se están convirtiendo en algo como el baseline o el mínimo esperado. Entonces, este cambio se ha debido a una combinación entre la presión del mercado, expectativas de los inversores y señales políticas. Lo bueno es que todas estas lecciones que estamos aprendiendo en Europa son transferibles de una forma que podemos establecer referencias, priorizar medidas y buscar nuevas maneras de invertir aquí en México. Entonces, en esta sesión, Chemo explicará cómo el sector inmobiliario europeo está implementando edificios con cero emisiones netas y evaluaciones de descarbonización. no solo para cumplir con normas en el sector, sino también para proteger el valor. Compartiremos algunos patrones basados en casos europeos y les mostraremos cómo construir vías de descarbonización que puedan adaptar al mercado mexicano. El objetivo es que se vayan con una comprensión clara de lo que se avecina, los pasos prácticos a seguir y implementaciones para sus proyectos y carteras. Entonces, aquí uno de los datos que les mencionaba es que hemos estado 3 años en el mercado, hemos trabajado con más de 75 expertos en edificación sustentable, hemos impactado 1.9 millones de metros cuadrados en certificación y muchos datos más. Eh, ok. Creo que podemos avanzar. Siguiente. Next. Ok, un primer paso es hablar de por qué la descarbonización es importante y cómo es esto relevante en el mercado mexicano. Ok, primero que nada, una de las metas que tenemos hacia 2030 en el mercado mexicano es que el 45% de nuestra energía para el 2030 sea energía limpia. Quiere decir esto que venga de energías renovables. Esto junto con las limitaciones que tenemos en cuanto a permisos de generación, van a impactar en el que cada vez se busque más la eficiencia energética, cada vez se busque más descarbonizar los edificios desde otras alternativas. También el impulso ESG nos dice que en el 2024 aproximadamente el 27% de los bonos que se emitieron en México son etiquetados con criterios ESG. Esto es alrededor de 71 millones de pesos mexicanos, lo que refleja que una fuerte demanda de activos de bajas emisiones se está avecinando en el mercado. Entonces es algo que ya está en la puerta. También algunas de las restricciones que mencionaba en cuanto a la parte de generación de energía renovable nos tiene limitado con una producción de 0.5 megawatts y se espera que se aumente para 0.7 megawatts. Y en lo que estos permisos se van incrementando, nosotros tenemos que buscar algunas herramientas de cómo descarbonizar los edificios a través de proyectos de eficiencia energética o otro tipo de estrategias. También los edificios verdes es algo cada vez más relevante y cada vez se avecina esta fuerza que nos hace que se van a vincular a incentivos fiscales, ventajas financieras o menores costos en el endeudamiento. México al mismo tiempo está alineado con la taxonomía verde, con los objetivos basados en ciencia. Entonces esto nos dice que cada vez se avecina más todas estas regulaciones que ya se han visto en el mercado europeo. Los compradores internacionales valoran cada vez más las credenciales ecológicas al comprar o alquilar propiedades residenciales o comerciales. Y también esperamos que el sistema de comercio de emisiones de México entre en vigor para el 2026 y esto permita un uso mayor de compensaciones de carbono, creando nuevas oportunidades para las entidades de cumplimiento, los proveedores de crédito de carbono y potencialmente otros participantes del mercado. Las contribuciones determinadas, fijadas por México con la ONU, se han ido actualizando. Esto se ha visto en una nueva y más actualizada meta de tener una reducción de nuestros gastos de efecto invernadero de manera incondicional del 35% y de manera condicional del 40% para el 2030. Y la Alianza Global para la Construcción y los Edificios, el Global ABC, señala que México también se ha comprometido a reducir un 66% de las emisiones de edificios residenciales y comerciales para el 2030. Entonces, con toda esta perspectiva, vemos que la descarbonización es algo que ya tenemos a la vuelta de la esquina. Entonces, es algo que se debe empezar a priorizar. Ahora los dejaré con Shemu para que él dé una pequeña explicación de cuál es el panorama en Europa, cómo podemos aprender de lo que ellos han realizado. Now we're switching to English to Shemu's planet. So Shemu, if you want to.
Yeah, of course. So, hello everyone. At first, I'd like to say that I'm really pleased being in Mexico, the beautiful country, and that I have an opportunity to work hand by hand with our colleagues here in Mexico. And it's really good to see how the sustainability market in Mexico is growing. So today I'll tell you a little bit about the decarbonization, why is it actually important in European Union, and how to decarbonize building without losing value, and actually how to decarbonize building to increase the building value. So at first, I would like to say, why is it important, why the decarbonization is important in European Union? But first, maybe a short brief, what's actually decarbonization and what does it mean for real estate market? So in general, decarbonization is the limiting of the emission of the CO2. For real estate market, it can mean two things. First, which means embodied carbon. When we are constructing the new building, so the way of how decarbonization works is to decrease a harmful, let's say, number of material, or to implement better quality, more eco-friendly material, so we can decrease the number of CO2 which is emitting during the building process, the construction process. For operational carbon, it means it's strongly connected with energy efficiency. So actually, most of the decarbonization we are doing by increasing energy efficiency of buildings, so decreasing energy consumption of existing buildings. So why is it important in European Union, meaning the decarbonization? Actually, there are three groups of the reasons. First, as I mentioned, this is about improve asset value. Second, fulfill regulation. And third one, allow for financing. What Javier said before, there are some stuff that Javier mentioned that may be important in the Mexico in the years regarding financing, some kind of regulation. I wanted to say that in Europe it is right now, and I will prove that right now decarbonization is important and actually is must-have. At first, regarding improving an asset value. So for sure, when we decarbonize the building, we are improving the multi-level criteria. The certification, multi-criteria certification level. The second thing, as I said, this is strongly connected with energy efficiency. So by decarbonization, we are able to reduce operational costs. So actually, for building owners, it can be really relevant because we can attract tenants to come to our buildings. And also for tenants, it may be also really good because some tenants in Europe have their own target in relation to the decarbonization and ESG in general. Second thing, it is just regulations. So regarding to energy performance building directive in all Europe, we'll need to decrease an energy consumption and we need to make a refurbishment of 60% of the, let's say, the worst stock that we have until 2027 and 6% until 2030. So 1/4 of the building stock needs to be refurbished regarding to that. There is also taxonomy. Javier mentioned that you have it the same, let's say, little bit similar taxonomy than in Mexico. We have it in European Union, and actually, right now it's let's say not mandatory for every building, but if you want to get a financing from the bank, actually, it started to be really important. So for that, there are some regulations regarding energy performance classes related to energy efficiency, which relates, of course, to decarbonization. Allow for financing. So actually, it is, I think, quite new. It started maybe 3-4 years before. So we can see that banks are giving requirements regarding energy efficiency, whole ESG actually. So if you want to get some kind of funding, maybe not even funding, but if you want to get a financing, so kind of loan for the building that which we are constructing or which we are building, which we are renting or buying. So there are requirements that need to be aligned with those requirements. And also there is a variety of type of, let's say, non-refundable funding that we can get for our buildings if we are doing some kind of decarbonization strategies. At first, I'd like to show you the graph showing how often banks in Europe, actually this refers to Central Europe and Western Europe, how often they let's say refuse to give a finance for the building if the building does not comply with ESG requirements. So the strong part of ESG requirements are decarbonization and energy efficiency. So as you can see, for countries, let's say like Poland or Czech Republic, it is really common that you will not get the, let's say, the money for the building if you do not fulfill the ESG requirements that banks impose on you. And in Western countries, it is much more often than this. But as I said, it's growing. The requirements are changing. They are more strict. So I think that in the next year, we'll have even more in that countries. So that will be, let's say, the mandatory. Some kind of examples of requirements that banks imposes on the buildings. This is kind of examples. Of course, every bank has their own. They can differ. And actually, maybe the question why they have that kind of requirements. Actually, it's because banks also need to report, and they need to report. There is a word like green asset ratio. So they need to report to their, let's say, central bank how many of the building stock or the asset they have are green. So because of this requirements, they are inputting some requirements on our buildings. So the most important, I think, is the certification. It's not only LEED, but in Europe specifically is BREEAM. But for your purpose, LEED, it's a kind of certification that kind of must have actually. Some banks even talk about the level of the required certification. So for example, it needs to be LEED Gold, but if you want to have a financing. The second thing is developed decarbonization strategy. So it started to be really often also that they require this. They require from you to show that you have a strategy on how to decarbonize your building, and at best, how to be compliant with the decarbonization target, which means CRREM, for 2030. I'll talk about CRREM a little bit later. Also, there are strict requirements regarding energy consumption, primary energy consumption, or energy efficiency, let's tell it that way. So there is strict information that you need to be below that level. The energy that your building is consuming per square meter needs to be below some level. So that are kind of recommendations, not recommendations, sorry, requirements that we need to pass. So right now, I'm going to CRREM. So what's the tool? Actually, if we are talking about the decarbonization, we need to have some kind of tool to calculate the carbon footprint of the building, meaning the emissions of the building. And actually, we need to have, if you want to decarbonize our building, we need to have some kind of, let's say, targets. So CRREM is an institution connected strongly with European Union, which creates, which also actually created the tool, which is called like the same, like CRREM. And so actually, this is the result of the CRREM tool. What is it? What is included? At first, on the left side, you can see the GHG. So let's say carbon emission in kilograms per square meter annually for a building. And here we have some kind of years, right? So the target regarding to a Paris Agreement is that we'll decarbonize almost everything during 2050. So we need to be around zero. And actually, for every country, for every type of the building, there is a line showing, let's say, the average building stock, an average carbon footprint of the building, or let's say maybe the desired carbon footprint of the building. And every year, it needs to be lower and lower. So that's, let's say, the decarbonization path that we need to follow, this green line. So above, we have, because this is the prepared analysis from one of the buildings. So below we can see where we actually were, because it was quite old, 2021. Where is our building? So this is our, for some kind of particular building, it was the carbon emission for that particular year. And if we don't do anything with the building, we'll be hitting that black line. You can say why it slopes, what it's not like, why it's not steady, why it changed. It's because CRREM is very, let's say, advanced tool, and it's also assume that regarding to the plans that every country has, it assumes the decarbonization of the electrical grid. So in Europe, it's not only that we are decarbonizing the building, but of course decreasing the energy consumption, but also what is done is like we have a very strict requirements regarding decarbonization of the production of the electricity. So even if we don't do anything with the building, our carbon footprint will drop down. But as you can see, the line is more, let's say, slope than the target than here. So we cannot just rely on the decarbonization of the grid. We need to do something with the building in order to be below that line. And as I mentioned, right now, this tool and this target started to be really relevant for Polish market, but not only for Polish market. And clients are asking if our building is below the CRREM line or not, because if it's not, so it may be in the future, they may have some kind of problem with the building, selling it, for example. So right now, I'll go to how to decarbonize the building without losing a value. So actually, I'll talk about existing buildings and design buildings. At first, we are not advise our client to do everything what they can with every possible money that they have. We try to be reasonable, and I think that reasonable ways are the only way to do the real impact actually. So for the existing buildings, normally it should be started to do something with the operational improvement. So it's not to change some devices, let's say the hardware of the building, but at first make some operational improvements. And there is a lot in the building, in commercial building, that can be done. Some changing of set points, some implementing some kind of algorithm to improve the energy efficiency. And actually with these, especially for complex building, we can do a lot. We can save a lot of energy, so we can do a lot of optimization without investing a big money. The next step, if our building is, let's say, well managed, we go to capex investment, meaning our plants are not efficient, our HVAC system is not efficient somehow. So we are investing for new stuff, or let's say more efficient stuff. Then we are investing in renewable energy sources. It's Polish name, sorry for that. So we are investing in that. So when our building is, let's say, perfect in energy efficiency, then we try to produce an energy to decrease let's say consumption of the not clean energy from the grid. And the last step, if we somehow need to offset some kind of carbon, if you want to achieve some targets, in that case, we need to do offsetting by, for example, buying some green energy, so other ways of offsetting offsetting. But this is the typical way, and we can see that Polish building owners and investors are really following that. And some of them are trying to do some offsetting, but this is the last step of buying green energy. At first is to improve energy efficiency. For design building, it's actually quite the same, but of course we cannot do any operational improvement. But what we can do is we can improve, let's say at the first geometry and facade. Next, we care about construction materials. because also we have some requirements regarding embodied carbon. Right now they are imposed, but there will be in a few years that we need to calculate this carbon and this embodied carbon. And in some countries, for example, in Finland, we have strict requirements, so we cannot construct a building if the embodied carbon is above some level. So next, we care about HVAC and then renewables energy. So that's the let's say, perfect way to decarbonize the building. So now, how actually to do that? The most important for the existing building is to do a proper energy audit, because we need to know how. An audit is a complex process connected with, at best, some measurements, viewing of the building. It's, let's say, getting familiarized with the building in order to find a way on what we can do actually for that building, what kind of recommendation, what kind of changes we can do. So it's about finding ideas. For the design building, it's best to do some kind of workshops to try to think about stuff. So with that, we came to idea. But idea is not, it's not only this. We don't know if we have an idea, let's say, to exchange chiller. We don't know if it's efficient, and we can go, and if it's profitable. So we need to check that. So to check this, the best way that we are doing in let's say, Europe, there are two things to be calculated. The first is how much energy we can save, and the second, how much we need to invest for that, because we need to calculate the return time back period. If it's too long, of course, we'll not invest in some things because it will not be our priority. So we are using energy modeling as an optimization tool, so creating, let's say, digital twin for existing buildings, which is connected with the whole systems, whole set points, whole schedules. So actually, we, let's say, imply a BMS. We are trying to copy, let's say, the BMS and to set into our model. And then every of the recommendations that we have, we are trying to calculate to see how much energy we can save. Then, of course, we need to do costing. And at best, it's asking the general contractors, or, for example, we want to change a chiller, or we need to do some BMS upgrade. So how much it will cost? And with that, we come to some conclusions. So we have a list. This is, of course, some kind of examples. We have a list of, let's say, per building, 20, 30 ideas on what we can do with the building. And then after the audit, after the calculation, we can see costs, savings, also CO2 emission savings, cost savings, and calculated the return payback period. And typically, of course, it depends on clients' targets, because it's not only that we need to fulfill with CRREM, for example, or the requirements that I told you before, but some clients has very specific requirements. For example, I know some that they want to decarbonize completely by some year. So it's not only that we are looking in return time back period, but for if we are doing that, if the biggest motivation is the increasing the value, of course, we are looking only into recommendations that are quite easy to be paid off. And with this, all of the recommendation, so what we can do is we can do the decarbonization roadmap using CRREM. So actually, we gather some of the recommendation, we connect them into groups, and we are showing how much we can decarbonize with, let's say, in some steps that we define. So I'll try to show you some case study regarding the decarbonization process that we already delivered in Poland. So first one, it's quite an iconic building in Warsaw. Actually, the idea for that, this is an office building in the center, constructed in 2000, and in Poland, actually, if something is, let's say, older than 20, 25 years, there is a big need to improvement. We can see that. So the building is a little bit older. Meaning the HVAC system, for example, that has been installed that is outdated. It's not so efficient because during that years, let's say designers didn't care a lot about energy efficiency. It wasn't as important as it is right now. So the system that were used were not so efficient. So there was actually two ways on how it can be handled. The first, which is also common in Poland, but not only in Poland, is demolition of the building. So build that from the scratch. Of course, if you build something from the scratch, from the beginning, you can optimize it as much as you want. It's from one way is the best, let's say, idea. But if you build a new building, of course, you need to spend lots of more money, and you harm the environment because of the embodied carbon, the embodied carbon. So it was decided to not to demolish the building, but to refurbish it. So what was the process that we did together, of course, with designers and then being owner investors? We started with energy audit, then preparing workshops on what to do with that building. We figured out a lot of ideas. Of course, not of them were good because we calculated after the energy model, the costing. So we got the conclusion and prepared a final list of recommendations that we put for the building. And right now there is an implementation process ongoing, which is quite long. It will be like 1, maybe 2 years to finalize. And there are some examples of the optimization that will be kind of delivered in the building. So there are lots of different connected with different systems, starting from optimizing a BMS, actually setting new BMS system to control building in efficient way. Lighting, so of course, every fixture has been changed to LED with the lighting control, like for example, dining or occupancy control. For the HVAC system, new chillers with free cooling technology. So maybe I'll not go through all of them, but it was, let's say, very general modernization, general refurbishment. It wasn't like two, three systems. It was whole of the building. And actually, we were very lucky because for that particular case, the building, let's say they ran out of the tenants, meaning the building was free of tenants. They wanted to have it, to have, let's say, free hand to improve the building. It is much harder, actually. We did that also for some buildings when you have tenants in a building, because you need to keep the building operation, and in the same time you need to change some parts, so it's harder. But for that particular case, investor was very conscious, and he decided to talk to tenants to change their location for a while, so it was free of them. So what was the result of the whole? What is the expected result of the whole refurbishment story? So at first, about building carbon, embodied carbon in the building. So of course the retrofit costs something, right? Because some equipment needs to be changed. So there is a cost for the environment, but if you want to build a new building, which was also one of the option, so we'll use like 6 times more of the CO2. So it was, from that point, it was very good decision. Regarding operational carbon, we were able to cut that like 40%, so which is also really good. And regarding carbon emission and comparison to other buildings, right now the building is, say, in really good condition. It will be in really good condition to other buildings that we have in our database in Poland. So the second one that I wanted to tell a little bit is the largest Polish courier company. This is the warehouse, and they have a really ambitious target. So they want to decarbonize the whole company, but really without any, let's say, substitutes. So they have a big budget for that. They really want to do that stuff. So of course, we did a lot of optimizations for them, making energy, doing energy audits, then some workshops on figuring out what is the best way to put, what kind of system to put, heat pumps, but in what size, maybe size it differently. So there was a huge study regarding this. But the most important stuff that I think we kind of learned from that is that for lots of buildings, I think even in Mexico, the problem is that the sizing of photovoltaic panel is not doing correctly, meaning for lots of the times it's oversized. For example, if the building consumes, I don't know, 1 GWh, and we put a photovoltaic panel to produce 1 GWh, so in total, we can balance it to 0. But in the reality, the case is that we, of course, produce energy only in the daytime, but we consume all of the day. So lots of energy can be wasted. So we did an optimization of the PV photovoltaic system using, of course, the simulation to optimize the number of this. And you can see there is, of course, in Mexico, it can look a little bit different, but in Poland, there is a typical production from the PV panels in summer for that for this building previously, and that's in the winter. So this is a big difference between and variety between a season. So the optimization that we took was at first to size properly the photovoltaic panel. Actually, we decreased this number, being honest. So we saved some cost. Then we tried to optimize the capacity of the electrical storage. So you can see here, there are two graphs. This is without energy storage, and this is with energy storage. So at first, and this is with the same size of PV panels. So you can see here, there is this amount of photovoltaic energy that is used by building. The same here, actually. And if we are able to recover energy from this part, meaning when the building cannot, let's say, adapt this energy. So if we are able to recover that, so our actual energy consumption will be only this. So it was quite a great study, and they are doing it right now. So we are quite proud of this project. So that was also the CRREM pathway for them that we delivered. So in few steps, we are able to divide every recommendation to few steps, and then to show them how it can be implemented. So actually, they will be in line with their target. So they'll be able to decarbonize. And actually, the last, let's say, case study, quite maybe funny, I don't know, but very simple. Once a client called us and he mentioned that he was a tenant of one building, and he mentioned that he has a big problem in cooling. He's paying a lot of money for cooling in winter. So it was quite strange. And we came to the building, did some energy audit, and it comes out that for a few months, they have a problem in one floor in heating system. So actually, to being able to compensate that that problem, they increased the temperature of an air that is supplied by ventilation system. So from the ventilation system, they put like 26 Celsius. So it was able to heat that spaces. But for the rest of the building, it was like they put a hot air, but in the same time, it was too hot. So they need to cool it down. So that tenant has a big problem because he doesn't know why it's really hot in the building. So sometimes in a building, we even don't know how, let's say, wrong it can operate normally without a very detailed measurements and without audit. And I just wanted to say that sometimes it's not only about to change some equipments and to invest in a building. Sometimes solving some particular problems and, let's say, setting the building in, let's say, correct way can give us a lot of benefits. So we don't need to have a big money for that. And that is the, I think, good example of adding value for the building by the decarbonization. And actually, I think that's all. Thank you for the time, and if you have some questions, go.
I don't know if anyone has any question. We're seeing the chat comment from Esteban that photovoltaic system plus battery and storage system is the solution for the Mexico current electrical situation. We are completely agree. Right now, we cannot depend only in the amount of renewable energy that we can buy, but also in the amount that we can generate and at the same time storage. And besides that, I don't know if anyone has a question for Shemu or I.
Hola, sí. Tenemos otra pregunta en el chat. Recuerden que pueden escribir sus preguntas en el chat y las vamos leyendo para que nuestros panelistas nos vayan contestando cada una. David Domínguez pregunta, we should discuss the battery solution to insurance companies. They are interested in build to be 100% functional, and that provides resilience indicators.
Yeah, so actually, it's, I think, really good comment because I don't know what would be the situation in Mexico, but in Poland and also in Europe, there sometimes we started to have a big problems with electricity, meaning that we have in the future we can have more that we'll have blackouts. So the energy storage is. I show the way how we can store the energy to, let's say, lower some kind of costs. But of course, if you want to sustain the power of the building in that time that we cannot use it from the grid, that kind of batteries can be used for sure for that. And there are some kind of both buildings that they requires a constant powering, for example, hospitals, right? So yeah, I think that this, I completely agree with the comments. It can be the solution for that kind of buildings. It's not only about saving money and energy efficiency.
Okay, it's still David saying, take Spain as the example. No power for hours created chaos. If they had batteries and solar energy, that would have never happened.
Yes, actually, that's the problem that I mentioned. So I hope not, but what we can see in Europe is like there is a big increase in renewable energy from the sun in the grid. So there are lots of times when actually there's too much energy on the grid, and that can be some problems with that. Sometimes it can be reversed. So we rely on that energy, but we don't have it. So we need to act quick to power some kind of gas, for example, plants. But sometimes, as in Spain, as David mentioned, there can be such problems. So in order to avoid this solution is the recommendation. I mean, this storage system is a good solution. Yeah, I agree completely.
Okay, thank you, Chemo. We have more few questions. Is it more important to think about these strategies for new or for existing buildings?
Okay, so let's say the answer that is most favorable for me is, of course, it depends. It depends on what kind of requirements do we have. The requirements for new buildings, let's say for design building, are much more strict. So let's say for existing buildings, I'm talking about Europe. In existing buildings, we know that we need to do something. There are some requirements. If you want to sell the building, for example, if you want to buy a building or to sell, maybe buy, we need to fulfill some requirements. But let's say they are not maybe as strict as for design building. Of course, for the design building, we can do a lot of more. So as Javier said, for example, there are some regulations that maybe we don't have right now, but pretty sure that they will come. So we can see that in Europe. So let's say 4 years ago, I think that first net zero strategy we delivered like maybe 4 years ago. And for me, actually, it was quite new. So it was quite new for me. Right now, we are doing a lot of this. So I think that it's really important for the design building to try to care about this. Why? Because during the design process, we can do a lot. We can change our systems, and it's not about investing more money. Sometimes you can do some little changes and care about energy efficiency, so you can be prepared. Let's say for the future. If you don't care about this on the design stage, and you want, for example, to sell the building, there may be in the future some kind of complication because you are not passing that requirement or this or this. So you need to invest much more money. It's easier to change on the design stage than change on the, let's say, existing buildings. And I give you an examples also from our case study. So for some of the buildings that we worked on, existing buildings, in Poland, one of the most energy consuming system is ventilation and heating. So with those buildings, we were unable to set some systems because there were not space, because the designer at the beginning didn't, I don't want to say that he didn't care. There was not it wasn't regulated. So it doesn't need to care. He didn't need to care about this. And right now there is a big problem because we cannot install heat recovery system, and we are trying to figure out something which is costful, not so easy to, to rescue that energy. So my strong advice is to try to care about this from the beginning.
Of course, it's more easier.
Yeah.
And one more question. In your experience, have you seen a big change in the evaluation of the buildings by implementing certifications or this optimization strategy?
Yeah, so answering that question, being honest, it's not easy. It's not like say easy calculable. So it's not like we have one building with the same building with the. It should be we should have the same building with the certification and without to see the differences. But it's really complex, of course, to calculate the asset value. But we know for sure, and there are some researchers about this, that in Europe, the price for renting, for example, and the let's say the asset value is bigger when we have certification. But there's other thing. it's not that, let's say, our asset is better when we have a certification. Right now, it's just a standard. So I'll give you one hint, one example. I talk with our colleagues, and the number of this LEED certification in whole Mexico, the number it being annually is lower than we are certifying. Only our company is doing certification in Poland, which is like, I don't know, one state in Mexico. So we have a lot. Almost every office building above 1,000 square meter has a certification. I think maybe even smaller than them. So one thing is having a better value, but the other thing is just the standard. It's just a standard. We need to do that. And of course, with better, let's say, level, it's much easier to find a tenant. So in that case, we can say that is that. And the answering the second question about energy efficiency and decarbonization, if we can see the difference. Actually, we have, let's say, if we are, if we have the building, so for what is tenant is paying? And so firstly, he is paying for the energy that he consumes, computers, etc. The second, he is paying for service charge. And the third one, he is paying for just the rent. So what can be done actually is like when we decrease energy consumption, so we decrease service charge. And in that case, it is a, let's say, place to improve, let's say, to little bit maybe to extend a little bit the rent price. That's one way. But the second way is that tenants, especially from Western countries, but also Polish tenants, are really care about certifications, about net zero strategies, and they are asking. So some of the job that we are doing because the owner was asked about the tenants. Do you have this? Do you have this? Do you have kind of, I don't know, decarbonization roadmap? Do you have the certification? So they need to have it, actually.
Okay.
Yeah.
And we have one last question.
Yeah.
From Samantha Renteria.
Yeah.
Why why is BREEAM the most used in Europe, while in the US and Mexico is LEED certification?
Yeah. So I think answer is simple. Actually, let's say that they are equal. It's not that some certification is better, some is worse. So if you have the LEED certification on the gold level, it can be the same like BREEAM excellent. It's not that banks require only BREEAM. You can have this, you can have the GNB, some German. But why is most popular? Most popular, the answer is quite easy. It's about the standards. So BREEAM allows to use European standards, and it allows to use national standards, for example, Polish standards. So it is much easier in Europe to obtain BREEAM certificate. It is much more easier to obtain this than LEED. Of course, we also have this. For example, my first project that I delivered in Poland, there were LEED certification for office buildings. So I know how to do that. But hard to say the exact number, but I think that around 90 maybe % of the whole certification in Poland, and not every European countries, because Germany can be different, but it's BREEAM.
Okay. And Esteban Oroño is asking, what about EDGE certification?
It's in Europe. I think we know this. I think that even maybe you can help with this, but I think that we are doing that also in some Polish building, maybe, but it's quite new. It's not so actually common. Yeah, I will.
Yeah, just as Chemo mentioned, yeah, H started for development countries, as if the USGBC started with certification in the United States and BREEAM started in the Europe. Each has been rising and expanding to another countries, but it's not as popular as the other ones that have been in the market for many more years. It started only for development countries, and now it's expanded for any country can apply for a certification. We are having with time much more projects, but it's not as popular as the other ones.
Thank you, Javier and Chema. Well, bueno, creo que con esto terminamos las preguntas, la sesión de preguntas y respuestas. Y pues no me queda más que agradecerles por compartir su experiencia. Thank you for share your experience, Chema. It was a great presentation for all the people who get to connect today. So, muchas gracias también a todos los asistentes. Eh, les, les recordamos que pueden encontrar esta grabación el día de mañana en nuestro canal de YouTube. Y pues, muchas gracias, reiteramos nuestro agradecimiento por darnos esta pequeña presentación de todo su trabajo. Y a Daniela también, que es parte del equipo, por ayudarnos a gestionarlo y hacer esto posible. Thank you
Thank you
all.
very much.
Thank you very much. Muchas gracias.
Thank you. So, buena tarde a todos. Hasta luego.
Hasta luego.
Hasta luego. Bye.
So we can disconnect, right?
Yeah.
Thank you for your time. Thanks.
Thank you for your time too.
Yeah, bye
Nice
bye.
to meet you. Bye.